All right, good morning, and welcome to the second day of the 2020 Américas Symposium. My name is Albert DeGarmo, and for those of you who did not join us yesterday, I'll be serving as the Master of Ceremonies for this event. Before we move into our keynote speaker for the event, we wanted to touch base on a few housekeeping items. First, we wanted to share an update about who is joining us today. And we're excited to announce that we have reached over 880 participants coming from 56 different countries. As you can see, we have a broad representation and we have people dialing in from all around the world. And the participation by sector is a wide and diverse field as well. So we wanted to welcome everyone that is taking the time to join us this morning. Next, touching base on a few technical housekeeping items. First, this platform offers simultaneous translation. So if you look at the bottom left of your screen, you will note there are two different languages you can select. Please identify the language by either clicking English or Spanish. If you want to hear the conversation that is taking place on the floor, you will need to select the floor. Next, as we're experiencing a large audience for this event, all audience microphones have been disabled. Audience members can contribute to the conversation by providing comments or questions via the Slido channel on the right of your screen. Please be sure you select the corresponding room, the session that is taking place. We will try to get to as many questions as possible. We are very limited on time. However, all the questions will be saved and provided to the appropriate panelists following the event. We hope to have a response back to you within 48 hours. Additionally, we prepared some polling questions for the community to gain a better understanding of exactly who our audience is. So please take a moment to fill out the live poll, and we have also provided a brief questionnaire. The questionnaire is located in the Américas Symposium channel. So at the top of the Slido interface, if you select Américas Symposium, you should be able to access that questionnaire. To address some of the technical concerns that we had yesterday, in the email guidance you got last night, you should have received a detailed instruction on how to address any concerns you may have. And additionally, there was a link that showed an instructional video on how to interact with the software. If you continue to encounter any technical difficulties, please use the chat function at the top of the screen, located right next to the blue eye icon. The web switcher team should be able to address any concerns. We also want to take a special note to thank the web switcher platform for hosting this event virtually for us and providing the simultaneous translation. We put together an exciting and diverse program for our second day, and we're excited to welcome and kick off the second day of the 2020 Américas Symposium. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first moderator, Ivan Deloach. Ivan, over to you.
And I serve as the Executive Director for the Federal Geographic Data Committee in the United States. And I have this distinct pleasure this morning of introducing our keynote speaker for the symposium, Dr. Nadine Alamé, who's the CEO of the Open Geospatial Consortium, where they're making location information findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable via consensus-based standards with collaborative agile development and industry partnerships. OGC is well known in our community and a great partner in developing standards as well as implementing those standards. Dr. Alamé is a recognized leader in the field of geospatial information systems, GIS, with experience in a multitude of domains, including aviation, Earth observations, public safety, and defense. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Alamé.
I'd like to start by thanking Américas and IGIF for inviting me to be part of this inspiring event. My special thanks as well to GSGF and FGDC and NOAA for their support of the work that I'll be sharing today on disasters response and planning. And I hope from the bottom of my heart we'll be together doing this in person next year. The title of my talk is aligned with the theme of the Américas Symposium, Better Together. My focus is on delivering value of geospatial with partnerships, interoperability, and innovation. A little bit about myself. I have been the CEO of the Open Geospatial Consortium, OGC, for about a year and a half. It's a great place for somebody like me who is passionate about connecting technology, people, communities, passionate about the good for society overall, and creating value from geospatial information. And with OGC, it's been the perfect fit because we're making location information findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, fair. And you'll be hearing me talk a little bit about fair in my talk. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with OGC, we are a global consortium representing over 500 industry, government, research, and academic organizations. It's the global consortium of geospatial experts. I'll start from the bottom because I hope you've heard of us in the context of being the authority for consensus-based open standards for geospatial or location information. And I hope we all agree that you cannot get to operations and you cannot get to standards without collaboration. So with that, OGC has been regarded as the neutral and trusted forum for communities like ours here to come together and tackle interoperability issues, not just within their own communities, but as you'll see when we talk about disasters, across communities. And last but not least, we're living in this very fast-paced world in terms of technical innovation, and we're living in this world of complex challenges like climate change, like COVID-19, the reason we're all here virtually. So we're not going to survive without thought leadership and innovation. And that's what OGC is. It's the hub for that thought leadership for everything that relates to geospatial and location. The most energizing part about OGC to me is the diversity of the membership, the mix between, everywhere, yes, on every continent, countries, and also the mix between commercial, government, and research and academia. We need to work together. I hope you recognize some of the names on the right-hand side, a sample of the OGC strategic principal and technical members, but I also hope you can check out the rest of the list because you'll find the hundreds of universities and the entrepreneurs and the startups and the small businesses that are energetically leading our way towards the future. And speaking of future, I think we're here today because the future is about data integration. And data integration is at the heart of decision-making, analysis, and prediction. And we're here today because finally now the value of geospatial in the data integration concept is being recognized everywhere as the glue, as the organizing principle for information. I mean everywhere, like in every domain. The COVID pandemic amplified this realization, this appreciation of geospatial, because we have now more leaders than ever talking about the where, appreciating the geographic dimensions of the pandemic and the response to the pandemic. But despite the progress that we have made, unfortunately, I think we're still a long way to go because COVID also amplified what we've been witnessing in terms of challenges in interoperability and information sharing and harmonization of data. We have more data than ever. We have data from more sources than ever. We have a proliferation of portals and dashboards. This is literally just a snippet, from experts, worldwide. But we're still struggling as a community and as practitioners and as leaders on how do we integrate information. We're struggling at global, national, regional, and local levels on how to integrate information. I think we're struggling to learn from each other, which brings me back to the theme of bridging the divide that you see here on this slide. How do we connect the dots, not just the Earth observation, the statistical, geographic information, but also how do we connect, each other's domains for better decision making that's going to impact everybody. On the upside, there's a lot of support. There's the UN disaster risk reduction, for instance. We have the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs that you've heard about, and we'll hear about more during the event. We have the integrated geospatial information framework, IGIF, from UN-GGIM. They're all holding this flag of trying to advance rapid data delivery, so sharing data rapidly, better put, and to improve collaboration. Each and every one of these initiatives. And we all know how critical rapid data sharing and collaboration are during disasters. And that's why I want to talk to you a little bit about disasters, because it's a big and it's definitely an ongoing challenge for all of us. To tackle this challenge, to contribute towards tackling the challenge, the OGC, as this melting pot that I mentioned earlier, has been contributing towards advancing a concept of standards-based spatial data infrastructure, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it, that will enable the right information to be delivered to the right user at the right time. And this has been a priority within OGC, and such a priority that we have actually dedicated, a series of initiatives towards it. OGC Disasters Pilots, sponsored by USGS, NASA, NOAA, and FGDC, as well as other principal and strategic members of the OGC. Our goal here is to demonstrate the possible. Right? That we can demonstrate that we can bridge the divide, that we can connect everything that you see on the screen. And this is what I mean. If I start with the technologies. So within these pilots, we try to build on the latest technical innovations as well as the established achievements of our, geospatial experts and community. So, with respect to delivering data on the mobile, to leveraging Earth observations, the latest advances in artificial intelligence, machine learning, analysis-ready data, cloud computing, Internet of Things, you name it. Now you expose everything here on the left-hand side with open standards and interoperability for accessing the data or discovering it or visualizing it or styling it. And you start to see the SDI puzzle come to life. And the idea here is you start seeing one spatial data infrastructure with pieces of the puzzle that can support limitless applications. So in 2019, we had this pilot, and within that pilot, we exercised the spatial data infrastructure that was evolving, in our disaster pilots. In a few applications, I'll share just a little bit here. Landslides, early response and evacuation. We did monitoring of soil, moisture saturation at hurricane landfall. Flooding, rapid flood risk mapping and prediction. Weather, extreme weather impact on agricultural productivity. That's a big area, agriculture. Rural wildfire response. And last but not least, I think it brings us almost full circle, health applications. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time on the health part. So within that pilot, within the resources that were mobilized to evolve the spatial data infrastructure, we had a small business building pandemic risk indices. And this was to aid coordination of response on, healthcare emergency, but also to identify hotspots, to allocate resources, to figure out impacts on supply chain, field hospitals, and on and on. Quarantine, dequarantine. This was a year ago. Little did we know back then, so a year ago, that what a small business, like in this case HSR Health, would build in the disaster pilot as part of this disaster pilot initiative will be so critical today because of COVID, and will actually end up helping decision makers save lives. That's the power of this infrastructure here. So more importantly, I think what we've done is we've demonstrated the possible in terms of meeting the needs of a diverse group of users: emergency managers, first responders, scientists, and citizens. So demonstrating the possible globally sounds great. It's not going to happen without leadership and without partnerships. And this is why I would like to commend once again the organizers of this symposium on the theme of actually better together and bridging the divide. I would like to take this message further and urge you to take action, each one of us, get involved and lead. Two initiatives within OGC that would provide opportunities. There's no shortage of opportunities. We just need the focus, and we just need to take action. One of them is the health spatial data infrastructure. We want to collaboratively build this infrastructure so that we're getting away from the silos of this is health, this is traditional SDI, this is contact tracing, mobility data. Like, we have to stop that. If the future is in data integration, we need to be able to mix and match, to plug and play. And it is 2020, so let's build this path towards a global pandemic, early warning, response, and recovery platform, so the world will not again face endless lockdowns and complete disruptions of societies. Taking this one step further, because it feeds into continuing the work on disasters. So thank you to the leadership of USGS and commitment. Leadership and commitment. Again, it's action. We're continuing this work in a new phase of the pilot. So the time is now. Thank you, GSGF, FGDC, NASA, NOAA, UN-GGIM, Américas, CNIDA, for committing to taking us to the next step, to going from innovation to operations, to improving the partnerships, to bridging the divide. So what we're trying to do here is to demonstrate the possible beyond in disaster response, preparation, and mitigation. Check out the URLs anytime if you need more information. So with the time that I have left, if I have to leave you with something, it's to take action, to get involved, to lead. We are very privileged to be able to play such an integral part in humanity's data future, because we're geospatial experts, because we're Earth observation, statistical, geographic information, and because we are connected together. There has never been this much recognition of what we can do, the value of what we can offer, so let's do it. And we have demonstrated the possible, so we know we can do it. I'll leave you with two things. There has never been more of a need for interoperability. So the foundation should be standards and interoperability if we want to keep this momentum, these connections sustainable, and also be able to build on them for new viruses and new pandemics and new disasters or combinations of disasters. So we have to have that, flexible one SDI sort of, concept. But I also want to urge that this is not just about technology. It's not about an innovation. It's just as much, if maybe not more, about the collaboration and the partnerships and, the bridging, the divide. And we have to have all these pieces. So all of us here as leaders and as practitioners in this community, I urge you, or I urge us, to collaborate on a strong foundation of standards and interoperability that will create a healthy data ecosystem that genuinely connects people, communities, technology, and decision-making for the good of society. And with that, I thank you again for the opportunity to be here with you today, and I hope we can do this again next year in better circumstances. Thank you again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you, Nadine, for your excellent presentation, especially the key messages on data integration, the value of usable data for problem solving, and the importance of spatial data infrastructures. And last but not least, the value of leadership. Your presentation, as we all know, this information is very relevant because we as a community are looking forward to participate in the disaster reduction pilot. I will now pass the ball over to my fellow co-chairs to prepare for session 6. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Nadine, for providing those inspirational comments for the keynote. We will now be switching to session 6, disasters. And I'm going to hand it off to David Green, who's going to be our moderator. So David, take us away.
No, yes. Okay.
We can hear you.
You can. Okay, thank you. All right.
You're welcome.
Good morning. My name is David Green. I'm the program manager for disasters at NASA, as well as the current chair of the Committee on Earth Observation Satellites for Disasters, and a strong supporter of the Américas disasters effort. This session will follow on with some of the theme that was brought up by Nadine this morning, so thank you, on disasters and particularly risk reduction. The session will provide an organizational highlights from a number of leaders working in the Americas region on location and geographical information that, again, in this theme, really supports the divide, and as we've seen this year, really this compounding of disasters and our social constructs. Across the group this morning, you'll be hearing from Michael Budd, a geographer from USGS, and a liaison to the International Charter. And I should say, having Michael here is reassuring because it means he's not announcing a new charter activation. Claudia Herrera, Executive Secretary of SEPREDINAC, again, a key partner organization throughout the region. Simone Lloyd, GISP, Senior GIS Manager, Trainer within the National Spatial Data Management Branch, bringing in the economic and other aspects of our regional priorities. Luis Robledo, Professor, Researcher, Engineering Science Department, brings in another perspective, representative from Chile, the key lead in the Américas disaster effort. Of course, we do all of this within the context of our efforts collectively to reduce risk. Raul Salazar, Chief from the Office of the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, regional focus on the Americas and the Caribbean. We'll be hearing from him. Oscar Zepeda, Executive Director, Secretariat, Security and Civilian Protection. Of course, the aspect of this is not just the state of the environment, but the connection to the people. And Oscar will emphasize that point. I'm very glad to share the moderating function with Ricardo Mena from the Office of Disaster Risk Reduction in Geneva and leads for the implementation of the Sendai framework. After all of the presentations and during the presentations, I hope to see questions come in. We will try to monitor those. And after the presentations, to enhance a short discussion on some of the key points, allow questions to be asked, comments to be made in Slido. And so please submit your information on that channel, and we'll be watching those. With that, I'd like to first presentation from Raul Salazar. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Raul Salazar. I am the Chief of the United Nations Office for Disaster Reduction, the Secretariat for the Americas and the Caribbean, based in Panama City. I'm pleased to join you to present some of the images that we have of the region in terms of how we have advancing in the use of geographic and spatial information to support the Sendai framework. But before that, I think it's important that we set the context in which these developments are taking place in the region. First, in 2015, when the Sendai framework was discussed, there was a context of a rising trend in the economic losses of disasters. You can see in this chart, in the orange line, how the economic losses have been increasing globally, while at the same time the mortality risks have been decreasing. Could be identified as an achievement of the efforts of countries and regions in general to reduce disaster risk. However, in the region of the Americas and the Caribbean, and taking into account a recent study that UN-GGIM developed jointly with CRED of the University of Louvain, in the last 20 years, the period from 1997 to 2017, the Americas and the Caribbean region has concentrated nearly 53% of the economic losses that have happened around the world. That compared to what it means in terms of extension and population of the Americas and the Caribbean, this absorption of losses is disproportionate to whatever other extension the regions of the globe have. So we have to look then into this condition and what are the drivers making our region in this case to absorb a largest part of these losses the last 20 years. And this leads us to one of the main concerns, let's say, of the international community when they got together in 2015, and 184 countries adopted what is called the Sendai Framework for Disaster Reduction, which is basically an international commitment towards 2030 to reduce the impacts of disasters in terms of economic losses, in terms of lives, but other aspects that are the basis of the sustainable development of the societies in the globe. For doing this, and having this context of this concern of the losses that were taking place around the globe and the threat that these losses meant for development aspirations, the Sendai Framework identified 4 main priorities. The first one related to understanding disaster risk. Basically, we need to develop our knowledge of what is happening, understand the hazards, to then, once understanding these hazards, develop better policies reflected in what is called the governance of disaster risk. Basically, what we want is that all the policies, legislative frameworks, national disaster strategies, and local disaster strategies reflect this knowledge to be better protected and ensure the future. But we also need that this development is based in a solid infrastructure, an infrastructure that is composed both of investments from the private sector and the public sector, but investments that are risk-informed. It means that whatever we build from now on is informed by the context of complexity brought by the hazards that exist currently and protect those assets for the future. And the fourth priority is related to how we are going to learn from the past to better construct for the future. It's what is called building back better. But in this context, what place has the advances of the use of geographical and spatial information to contribute to these priorities and goals and aspirations of humanity? The standard framework is very explicit in saying, indicating that at the national and local levels, we need to promote real-time access to reliable data, make use of the space and in-situ information, including geographical information systems, and use this information and communications technologies for advancing towards these targets and aspirations. And at the global level, it makes a very strong call for this sharing and knowledge to be shared among countries and regions, creating different types of platforms to share these advances in technologies, information, to nurture the decision and policy making at the national level. What has happened in the region? If we take a look at the regional level, what have been the advances in the region, we see multiple advances that have been developed in collaboration on application of this call of the standard framework. We see, for example, that there exists a framework, a global framework that is called the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework that is coordinating or facilitating the coordination and exchange of this knowledge among countries and regions. We have different initiatives, for example, the one developed by the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, Initiative GeoSur, that is basically a platform gathering all this type of information that is allowing countries to build hazard maps at different instances and levels. We have, for example, the Global Geospatial Information Management in the Américas. We have the Spatial Data Infrastructure Member States and Territories that have been promoted by the Association of Caribbean States that have benefited 19 countries so far. And this has been intra-regional collaboration with funds from Mexico, from Chile, but also these intergovernmental organizations convened by the Association of Caribbean States. We have seen, for example, how the Caribbean region has benefited from different instances coming from, in this case, the support of the NASA, for example, applying this knowledge in gathering this information and bringing this information for the benefit of the islands and the hazardous context that they face. But what is happening at the national level is important also to remark. At the national level, and this is an information coming from a recent document produced by the UN-GGIM. Basically, what it's saying that at the country level, countries have advanced and they at least give an important step in advancing in geospatial information. How this knowledge is being applied is a matter of different, it's applied in different areas and sectors. And the collaboration among countries is becoming very active in this line. What are the challenges and opportunities that we face? As we have seen, there are good practices to share and possibilities to facilitate this horizontal cooperation, regional and national. And there are many initiatives integrating geographical information now that have been carried in the region with excellent outcomes, but it is necessary to further these developments with integration in the standard framework targets. How we link this information to the development of basic infrastructure, risk-informed basic infrastructure. How we link this information to reduce economic losses to the disasters. How we link this information for a current target that ends up in 2020 that is calling for countries to develop national and local plans. And how many of these plans are risk-informed in terms of using this geospatial information in developing these maps? We have seen very little of them in the region. We need to continue linking these advances. It's not that the advances are not there. The matter is how we link this knowledge to the processes of building these maps to make them more effective and closer to the reality. In addition to that, we need to contextualize the description of risk. Recently, the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction developed this concept of systemic risk, which is basically opening the complexity of the reality that we face every day. We cannot talk of a single hazard anymore. We can now relate to a cascade effect of multiple hazards happening at the same time. COVID-19 is an example of this. But we need to understand this, and we need to apply the technology, geospatial and geographical information knowledge to better support the policy making in this complex type of hazards that the humanity faces today. And finally, we need to make sure that whatever we developed in the region is not only remaining in the region. We need to take advantage of this technology development that are happening simultaneously in other regions to make this knowledge wider. Getting specifically to the national plans, there is an opportunity now for this knowledge and these institutions to link to the efforts that are taking place in the Caribbean, in South America, and Central America for developing these national disaster risk reduction plans. These national disaster risk reduction plans also have a version and implications in the development of local disaster risk reduction plans, which are the places where disasters are happening. We better need to connect knowledge, national plans, and bringing this knowledge also to the local level. This is what we wanted to present to you, share with you this knowledge and appreciation for your time. I'm ready to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Good day, everyone. My name is Simone Lloyd, Senior GIS Manager and Trainer for the National Spatial Data Management Branch in Jamaica, and also Jamaica's co-chair support for the United Nations Global Geospatial Information Management Working Group on Disasters. Today, I'll be presenting to you on geospatial information and how it is that this is supporting disaster risk management decision-making in the Americas region. So we're all very much aware that disasters are impacting us, all of us, in terms of countries globally. So we'll be looking at the global context, the Caribbean context, the strategic framework on disasters, and geospatial response to disasters. So within the global context, we know that almost every, if not all, country is impacted by some form of disaster, whether it be natural or otherwise, and in particular in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, in terms of being impacted by a disease as a disaster. So last year, 2019, $150 billion worth of catastrophes were experienced by all the various countries as indicated in this slide with regards to natural catastrophes. Within the Caribbean context, we are particularly vulnerable as the Caribbean is particularly impacted by earthquakes, also hurricanes, and so the percentage in terms of damage and impact on our GDP is very significant. Also, the frequency is very high, and the amount of our population that is impacted is also very significant. With respect to the amount of persons who have been impacted in terms of injuries and persons being killed is also very significant, as indicated by the figures on this graphic. And the loss in terms of injury, loss of homes, livelihoods is also very substantial. So the damage percentage, frequency, and our population that is impacted is very significant, especially given that the Caribbean has a number of small island developing states which make us highly vulnerable. Now, the UN-GGIM, the United Nations Global Geospatial Information Management Group of Experts, decided in 2015 that it was important to establish a working group that would focus on developing a strategic framework on geospatial information and services for disasters that will be practical in manner, being a follow-up to the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, and also applying the special needs with regards to developing countries in terms of our context and having a global applicability with respect to the various regions that are impacted by disasters. This body is currently co-chaired by Jamaica and Japan and was previously co-chaired by Jamaica and the Philippines, and we have a membership of 21. So what is our vision? To ensure that accurate, timely, and also reliable geospatial information and services, that these are made available and they're accessible to whoever are the decision makers and whoever are the operational leads who deal with pre, during, and post-disaster activities. We would like to facilitate a forum for dialogue and coordination as one of our objectives with all the various disaster players, in addition to also encouraging policy that promotes open access to data and reducing data quality and security issues. Also, coordination and collaboration on geospatial information activities for disaster risk management across all the various stakeholders, and particularly within the United Nations system, is of high importance to us. So what would we like? At the end of the day, we want to ensure that the use of geospatial information and services and relevant statistical information is being utilized by the member states in them being better able to understand, formulate policies, and manage risks and impacts of disasters. And in particular, where this particular sitting is concerned, the Americas Symposium and the 7th session, we are looking forward to that being achieved within the Americas member states. So the strategic framework was developed, and it's accessible via the link that is provided in this slide. It's available in Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish as the 4 languages of the UN. An assessment tool was developed to facilitate member states being able to assess where they are in terms of the various, the 5 priority areas that are outlined in the strategic framework. There is a link for this strategic framework assessment tool, and we've extended the deadline to October 2 for all member states who have not yet completed it to be able to do so that we have a fulsome picture of what the status is in the various member states. So the strategic framework focuses on these 5 priority areas: the importance of governance and policies to drive the access to geospatial information and services, the importance of creating awareness raising and capacity building among the various players within the member states to facilitate this being achieved. Also, the whole matter of generating the data and managing it in terms of where it's housed, how it is made accessible, and all the common infrastructure and services that support its accessibility being highly important. Of course, within this context, resource mobilization is of high importance. The human factor, the physical factor, the financial factor, and all the other various factors that would aid in ensuring that through the use of the strategic framework and these 5 priority areas, the advancement of geospatial information to support disaster risk reduction in the Americas can be facilitated. So in Jamaica, what is our context with regards to geospatial response where disasters are concerned? Here we have outlined a number of our key entities that deal with support with regards to disasters and emergencies, Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, and other key players that deal with meteorological events, geophysical and geomorphological events, drought and flood events, the management and monitoring of our roadways, gullies, and security forces. All of these players, importantly, all utilize geospatial information and different services to drive the work that they do on a daily basis. We are proud of their achievements, but we also wish to ensure that they're able to hone in more in terms of utilization of more geospatial information and services to make us more efficient in what we do. So, Jamaica, through the onset of a major catastrophe in 2004 with Hurricane Ivan, was able to develop a national emergency GIF response team, and this team was really a vision of the then founder and co-chair of the Land Information Council of Jamaica, Mrs. Jacqueline Da Costa. So the Land Information Council of Jamaica is made up of different member organizations of government, private sector, and educational institutions who utilize geospatial information. Back then, given the support that was needed for the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, it was thought best to pursue having a group of GIS volunteers from across this body, which would then provide support to the ODPEN. And so from 2004, the team has been in existence and has been executing work since then and was approved in 2010 through a cabinet decision. So the National Emergency Response GIS team has been responding to various hydrometeorological events over time, also disease outbreaks, the hurricanes, tropical storms, depressions, flood, and landslides, drought and bushfires in terms of hydrometeorological, disease outbreak, chikungunya, and the present COVID-19 response efforts have all been pursued by the team. This just provides an overview of what the team has responded to in terms of a quick snapshot over time. So there have been local responses, primarily in Jamaica, and also the provision of geospatial response support to SIGIMA, the Rapid Needs Assessment Team, that has been deployed on a number of occasions to the Turks and Caicos Islands and the Bahamas. So we're very proud of the achievements of the team in providing this geospatial support. So the team facilitates initial damage assessments, GPS and GIS mapping of the impact of various disasters as they occur, and this just provides a few snapshots of the team in action. So where we're at, the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in the team being deployed to the National Emergency Operations Center of ODPEM from the 16th of March when Jamaica was declared a national disaster area to the 19th of June for 89 days. This was the team's longest deployment. Through that, the team was able to provide on-site remote mapping services for the COVID-19 cases on a daily basis, the generation of static maps that show the status, spatial analysis and predictive modeling and the results in terms of different maps to facilitate decision-making, the development of various operational dashboards, and Survey 123 forms to facilitate tracking and monitoring of various forms. So these are just some snapshots of the quarantine maps that were generated, isolation centers, various sightings in terms of cases occurring and the status to the various parishes of Jamaica that were done. Just a few snapshots. In addition, various survey forms were developed to facilitate monitoring of public health workers, various causes of coming with regards to COVID-19, the different types of cases, specific confirmed recovered and deaths, quarantines, isolation facilities. In addition, dashboards were created, both public-facing and also internal dashboards that facilitated different levels of monitoring. So what have we learned? What are the challenges and the opportunities? The COVID-19 pandemic is the largest global disaster challenge recorded. And as horrific as it has been, it has created an ideal opportunity to test and apply the strategic framework. So the pandemic has demonstrated that the critical importance of being able to access available and trusted geospatial information to drive the decision-making process. And as such, the working group on geospatial information and services for disasters encourages all member states to implement the strategic framework, particularly within the context of this pandemic, as a unique opportunity to monitor and track each country's progress across the 5 priorities. And in closing, key takeaways are that the generation of geospatial information and services is really a multi-stakeholder approach within member states, but also across the region, which is very important. In Jamaica's case, it required a number of players to be in constant dialogue and support each other in this process. Reliable, accurate, and available and timely geospatial information are key towards decision-making. Awareness building is essential where this is concerned. I thank you. Here are a few references that were utilized for the presentation. Thank you.
Hola, buenas tardes, buenos días. Mi nombre es Oscar Cepeda. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos en esta sesión 6 del Simposium Américas 2020 del uso de tecnologías geoespaciales para la reducción del riesgo. Mi nombre es Oscar Cepeda, soy director general de Protección Civil de la Secretaría de Seguridad y Protección Ciudadana en México. Mi historia es, yo soy ingeniero civil, estudié una maestría en Sistemas de Información Geográfica por la Universidad de Salzburgo y desde 1994 trabajé en el Centro Nacional de Prevención de Desastres, donde elaboré varios sistemas de información sobre riesgos. Esta es mi presentación. Básicamente voy a dar alguna información sobre cómo funciona el sistema de protección civil en México, cuáles son nuestras prioridades, las capacidades desarrolladas, cuáles han sido los principales productos, las historias de éxito y cuáles son el día de hoy las oportunidades y los retos que tenemos para el uso de la tecnología geoespacial en la reducción del riesgo de desastres. Como ustedes saben, México es un país que tiene una gran cantidad de fenómenos de origen natural y antrópico. En el mapa ustedes pueden ver un sinfín de fenómenos que han cruzado el territorio nacional, que han impactado de diversas maneras. En el territorio nacional estamos sujetos a sismos, a ciclones tropicales, a incendios forestales, a inundaciones. Tenemos varios volcanes activos y también aquellos fenómenos que son causados por la actividad humana. Cada uno de ellos puede ser monitoreado, puede ser alertado y puede ser mitigado a través del uso de información geoespacial. ¿Cómo se organiza el Sistema Nacional de Protección Civil en México? Pues se organiza en la parte superior, está conformado y dirigido por el presidente de México. Inmediatamente después se encuentra el secretario de Seguridad y Protección Ciudadana. Todo el ente que maneja la gestión de los desastres se llama Coordinación Nacional de Protección Civil, que está dividida en su área de atención de emergencias, su área de prevención, su área de fondos y transferencia de riesgo y su área relacionado con la normatividad y con la innovación. ¿Cuáles son las principales acciones que nosotros tenemos en este sentido? Tenemos varios productos. El primero es el Atlas Nacional de Riesgo, que permite integrar información geoespacial derivada de sensores remotos, satélites, drones y otro tipo de tecnología en una plataforma digital que se utiliza para el desarrollo de políticas públicas para la prevención de desastres, así como también para la toma de decisiones durante las emergencias. Esta es la dirección de nuestra herramienta, www.atlasnacionalderriesgos.gov.mx. ¿Qué es este sistema? Es un sistema que integra información dinámica, información que se obtiene de sensores remotos como satélites geoespaciales. Lo que están viendo ahorita en pantalla es una imagen de cómo el sistema toma de una imagen GOES, la procesa para generar un producto derivado que es el tope de nube y lo coloca en un sistema geoespacial. ¿Qué permite este sistema geoespacial? Llevar a cabo análisis sobre la exposición. Del lado izquierdo tenemos la población, se divide por masculino, femenino y por un rango de edades. Tenemos también una gran cantidad de información sobre escuelas, hospitales, viviendas y supermercados, así como hoteles y aeropuertos e infraestructura crítica. El Atlas Nacional de Riesgos entonces integra información dinámica a partir de imágenes de satélite, a partir de su procesamiento y su generación de set de datos vectoriales. Este es el esquema que nosotros utilizamos. Es un servidor que toma la información a través de servicios web distribuidos por diferentes agencias de México, la encargada, por ejemplo, de los sismos, la encargada del monitoreo de los fenómenos meteorológicos, la encargada, por ejemplo, del seguimiento y monitoreo de tsunamis. Cada uno de estos servidores, a través de la nube, integra en un servidor denominado Atlas Nacional de Riesgo y genera también, a su vez, servicios que pueden ser tomados y distribuidos. Muy importante, la información derivada de imágenes satelitales nos permite, en primera instancia, analizar el territorio, saber cómo crece la exposición, determinar las condiciones, por ejemplo, del relieve del terreno, con imágenes de satélite, con imágenes de satélites ópticos, con imágenes de radar. Se hacen diversos procesos para determinar zonas de posible afectación, zonas de inundación, también determinar a partir de la ocurrencia de un fenómeno las zonas de impacto. Es muy importante comentar que la observación de la Tierra representa el 80% de la información que nosotros integramos en nuestro sistema. También cooperamos de manera muy activa en México con la región de Centroamérica, la región mesoamericana que incluye desde México hasta Colombia, y siguiendo esta condición de uso de información distribuida, podemos generar dos desarrollos que México ha impulsado en la región. El primero es la Red Mesoamericana para la Gestión Integral de Riesgos, que es un sistema que permite tomar información, que también transforma información de observación de la Tierra en información para la toma de decisiones y permite que 9 países de la región mesoamericana compartan información y tomen decisiones ante la ocurrencia de algún fenómeno. También se ha trabajado en la plataforma de información territorial para el Caribe, denominado PIRCA. Es una plataforma también que sigue estos procesos de integración de información georreferida, que sigue bajo una metodología de sistemas distribuidos que permite también integrar información. ¿Por qué es muy importante la información georreferida? ¿Por qué es muy importante la información relacionada con la observación de la Tierra? Porque a partir de la información que obtenemos de la percepción remota, podemos actualizar la información sobre las condiciones sociales, naturales y del territorio para así llevar a cabo estudios sobre las amenazas. La primera forma de reducir el riesgo es conociéndolo, y a partir del conocimiento del riesgo, a partir de saber cuáles son las áreas de afectación y las intensidades de los fenómenos, podemos determinar medidas de prevención y medidas de mitigación. Y en este contexto, el uso de la información geoespacial constituye un pilar fundamental para poder elaborar estos diagnósticos. ¿Cuáles son estos retos y las oportunidades existentes, así como las brechas? Primero, pues lograr condiciones que permitan que quien genera la información tenga capacidad técnica para poder interpretar la información derivada de la observación de la Tierra. También es importante generar indicadores que nos permitan medir el impacto de las decisiones. Esto es, cómo tomamos la información, cómo la procesamos, cómo la difundimos ante la población y cómo esa información tiene un impacto en todos los tomadores de decisiones. Si hablamos de tomadores de decisiones, desde las autoridades hasta la población que tiene que decidir si evacúa una zona de riesgo o no. Es muy importante que todas las instituciones que tienen que ver en la generación, integración y difusión de la información proveniente de la observación de la Tierra tengan bien definido el rol en el sistema nacional. También es muy importante cuáles son algunos de los retos que tenemos, pues que el análisis de riesgo es una tarea de largo plazo que tiene una dificultad asociada a la incertidumbre del análisis y el modelado de los fenómenos. La información nacional que nosotros integramos en nuestro atlas es el marco de referencia para la generación de políticas públicas en materia de reducción del riesgo. Y sobre todo, el uso de nuevas tecnologías es esencial para la reducción del riesgo de desastres. Y nuevas tecnologías, muy importante y sustantivo, la observación de la Tierra, el uso de imágenes, el uso de información derivada de la observación de la Tierra no puede ser sustituida hoy en día por otra tecnología y representa hoy en día el mejor insumo que podemos tener los tomadores de decisiones para que en el día a día podamos estar informados, tomar decisiones con información de calidad y salvaguardar la vida de nuestros ciudadanos. Por mi parte es todo y les agradezco muchísimo pues su atención. Estaría concluyendo.
Muy buenas tardes. Para el Centro de Coordinación para la Prevención de los Desastres es un placer estar con ustedes en este importante simposio donde vamos a compartir la experiencia que tenemos desde nuestra región en la atención de la respuesta del COVID. Mi nombre es Claudia Herrera, soy la secretaria ejecutiva del Centro de Coordinación para la Prevención de los Desastres en América Central y República Dominicana y estamos a cargo del tema de gestión de riesgo y respuesta a emergencias y adaptación al cambio climático de los países que conforman el sistema de la integración centroamericana. Estamos conscientes de que estamos enfrentando una situación compleja, que nuestras entidades de gestión de riesgo y de protección civil, los sistemas de emergencia y de seguridad están en la primera línea de respuesta frente al COVID-19 y esto pone de manifiesto la importancia de una actuación rápida y eficaz para ralentizar la propagación y lograr la contención del virus. Nuestros países se enfrentan a desafíos sin precedentes. La presión sobre nuestros gobiernos es extrema y el impacto en las personas y en nuestras comunidades continúa creciendo. En un contexto de desafíos sin precedentes y universales, los gobiernos que conforman el sistema de la integración centroamericana y República Dominicana estamos a la vanguardia de los esfuerzos para superar estos tiempos de prueba. Como aliado dentro de la institucionalidad del sistema de la integración centroamericana, los entes rectores de gestión de riesgo y protección civil, los gobiernos, la comunidad científica, el sector privado y otros actores que estamos poniendo nuestra capacidad para desarrollar un importante rol de transformación. Esta pandemia ha revestido la importancia de nuestro papel en la sensibilización de nuestra población y ha requerido el rápido desarrollo de nuestros servicios nuevos y adaptados para apoyar las medidas sanitarias y al tiempo que garantizamos la protección de la población, que es por quienes trabajamos y que estamos haciendo esfuerzos especiales para apoyar a las poblaciones más vulnerables en nuestras ciudades y comunidades. Y estamos fomentando la solidaridad entre los territorios y poniendo en marcha medidas contra la discriminación, la exclusión y abordando las desigualdades. El 12 de marzo del presente año, nuestras autoridades desarrollaron el Plan de Contingencia Regional en un compromiso asumido al más alto nivel, donde se establecieron acciones en el marco de la intersectorialidad del sistema de la integración centroamericana para fortalecer las capacidades de respuesta de nuestros países en relación a la pandemia del COVID-19. Es de suma importancia remarcar que el COVID-19 requiere una estrategia desde una visión de gestión integral de riesgo, identificando el impacto y la extensión del virus en nuestra región y sobre todo por estas razones que acertadamente los presidentes y los jefes de Estado identificaron este plan articulado bajo una intersectorialidad en el que se establecen acciones específicas en el ámbito de la salud y la gestión de riesgo que van desde medidas de prevención y contención, medidas de manejo de pacientes, armonización de mensajes informativos, preventivos y educativos, así como también el acceso a medicamentos a través de procesos de negociación conjunta. Específicamente, nuestra instancia fue mandatada para implementar el mecanismo regional que nos permita fortalecer las capacidades de respuesta, preparación, mitigación en relación a la asistencia humanitaria. En ese sentido, también se incorporaron otras instancias del sistema de la integración centroamericana para dar un abordaje integral y holístico y sobre todo un enfoque sistémico a estas respuestas, en el que se incorporan toda la institucionalidad del sistema a cargo del eje de finanzas, de comercio, también de forma transversal, abordando el tema de seguridad, justicia, migración y toda la institucionalidad ha estado volcada de forma completa para dar una respuesta efectiva para el coronavirus. La siguiente, por favor. En ese sentido, hemos desarrollado una vinculación muy efectiva y muy estratégica con las instancias que conforman el convenio que se suscribió con la NASA y el sistema de la integración centroamericana. IGIF, Américas y la NASA han puesto a disposición una serie de recursos que nos ha permitido el desarrollo de estrategias a través de la observación de la Tierra y la información estadística y geográfica que nos permite tener una mejor toma de decisiones. En ese sentido, hemos buscado la identificación de los mapeos de los casos activos, de casos fallecidos y toda la situación de afectación de la región. Hemos tenido este mapeo de forma rápida, identificando la población vulnerable, también las capacidades y las habilidades que nuestros países han puesto a disposición y desarrollado una comunicación a través de mapas. Todo con el objetivo de poder reducir el riesgo de desastres a través del intercambio de datos y sobre todo asociados con las alertas tempranas y los productos regionales. Esta identificación de impacto de la extensión del virus nos ha permitido tener esta plataforma de información y coordinación a través de un sistema de información geográfico integrado que constituye una herramienta que nos permite presentar un análisis de necesidades inmediatas y futuras para la atención y contención del virus. Esta herramienta también nos permite fortalecer las capacidades de respuesta y de resiliencia en la población más vulnerable y que la institucionalidad y todos los estados miembros del sistema puedan desarrollar planes de contingencia y sobre todo con información y el aprovechamiento del sistema digital, los gobiernos, las instituciones y todos los sectores que estamos vinculados para atender la respuesta a la emergencia puedan tener información, sobre todo información oficial. Esto también nos ha permitido identificar escenarios complejos para la gestión integral de riesgo de desastres, proporcionar información temprana sobre la exposición a los riesgos en escenarios también que están siendo afectados por el COVID-19 y coordinar la información directamente con los centros de operaciones de emergencia, no solamente en el ámbito de la respuesta, sino que también para desarrollar las acciones preventivas. Esto es sumamente valioso para nuestra región porque nos permite identificar a través de este instrumento los atributos, los beneficios y esas contribuciones que una herramienta de gestión integral de riesgo faculta para la toma de decisiones. Permite tomar acciones con base a información acertada y sobre todo por medio de la visualización de datos sobre el comportamiento a corto, mediano y largo plazo de estas variables de afección que no solamente presenta el virus actualmente en la afectación en nuestra región, sino que también una evolución gráfica que nos permita tener una respuesta efectiva ante la pandemia, pero también con los escenarios complejos que se está previendo ante la llegada de la temporada ciclónica en nuestros países. Dentro de esta plataforma hemos aprovechado al máximo la información que nos permite el establecimiento de la observación geoespacial y en esta estrategia que incorporamos el proyecto de incorporación y observación geoespacial, como les mencionaba anteriormente a través del convenio de la SICA-NASA, nos ha permitido tener este monitoreo en tiempo real para prever, analizar y planificar las acciones en estos escenarios complejos multiamenazas, en coordinación con nuestras entidades, con una información fluida, en forma inmediata y sobre todo en tiempo real, y las entidades técnico-científicos de la región han tenido un rol también muy determinante y muy clave en la región para poder estudiar estos diversos elementos descriptivos y presentar las características geográficas. Esta herramienta pues nos permite tener esa mitigación a nivel regional y nacional y sobre todo la observación de las capas de amenazas de escenarios complejos e integrar los datos y la información en tiempo real para la previsión del riesgo hidrometeorológico, el monitoreo, la planificación y la mitigación del riesgo de desastres. Estas funciones de análisis que nos permite también identificar los casos de COVID en áreas de vulnerabilidad de riesgo de desastres. Es por eso que desde nuestra región estamos muy comprometidos a seguir desarrollando todos los esfuerzos de coordinación, tanto a nivel nacional como a nivel regional, y poder aprovechar al máximo estos recursos tan valiosos que nos permite, a través de la observación geoespacial, fortalecer las capacidades de respuesta y de contención. Igualmente hemos aprovechado el uso de la tecnología para desarrollar unas story maps, que son unos instrumentos que permiten llegar a la población común. Y a través de nuestras redes sociales estamos compartiendo esa información que pueda ser de fácil interpretación y que la población que no está familiarizada con los sistemas de información geográfica o no tiene el acceso a la tecnología adecuada a través de estos instrumentos de story map puedan tener también la información de sus amenazas, de sus vulnerabilidades, de su exposición y poder desarrollar también las acciones que nuestras autoridades están compartiendo y tener los sistemas de alerta temprana de forma oportuna, ágil, expedita y que la respuesta sea más efectiva. Esta ha sido una contribución muy significativa que nos ha permitido potenciar la toma de decisiones adecuadas con respecto al COVID, pero sobre todo actualmente en la respuesta de la emergencia para escenarios complejos. A continuación voy a presentarles un video donde podemos resumir toda la información que está plasmada en nuestra plataforma de información y coordinación y cómo la hemos aprovechado al máximo específicamente con las recientes afectaciones que hemos sufrido en nuestra región por el paso de la tormenta tropical Amanda, Isaías y actualmente en el monitoreo de la tormenta tropical Nana, que tiene probabilidades de convertirse en huracán y afectar a nuestros países. Todo esto pues es una contribución significativa y sobre todo una acción innovadora y el aprovechamiento de los recursos tecnológicos y muchísimas gracias por esta vinculación de todas las entidades y la observación geoespacial que están apoyando valiosamente a nuestros países. Adelante, video. Muchísimas gracias. Para el Centro de Coordinación para la Prevención de los Desastres en América Central ha sido una experiencia sumamente valiosa, enriquecedora y ha sido una gran contribución que todas las instancias vinculadas a la observación geoespacial han contribuido significativamente a la respuesta del COVID, pero también ahora en el escenario de afectación por el coronavirus. Desde el Sistema de la Integración Centroamericana queremos expresar nuestro profundo agradecimiento por ese respaldo, por ese acompañamiento y por ese compromiso que ha sido trasladado a nuestros países y que nos está permitiendo dar una respuesta a las emergencias de manera acertada, estratégica y sobre todo atendiendo las necesidades específicas de nuestra población vulnerable. Muchísimas gracias por esta oportunidad de participar en este importante esfuerzo y sobre todo por darnos el espacio de compartir nuestra experiencia. Hasta pronto.
Hello, I'm pleased to be able to talk to you today about the International Charter, Space, and Major Disasters. My name is Mike Buddy. I am a geographer with the U.S. Geological Survey, and I'm the USGS liaison to the International Charter. I also function as an authorized user for the U.S., meaning that I'm able to activate the Charter on behalf of both U.S. and non-U.S. interests when necessary. So in terms of the presentation agenda, I'll provide you with some background of the Charter, discuss how we're organized, and identify our primary stakeholders. Then I'll describe two case studies where I'll illustrate some of the products and information we're able to provide for disaster management, and finally discuss challenges, opportunities, and key messages moving forward. So the International Charter is an agreement among satellite operators from several countries to provide satellite data in the event of major disasters. It was founded in 1999 following the Space 3 conference. The founding members were the European Space Agency, ESA, and the French Space Agency, CNES. Soon after, the Canadian Space Agency, CSA, joined the Charter, and it was declared operational in November of 2000. So we're excited this year to be celebrating 20 years of serving the disaster response community. And we do this by providing access to multiple satellite constellations. Image data, a very important point, is offered for free. There's no cost to the user. Free access for satellite tasking. And we provide both pre-event and post-event acquisitions for disaster response. So the Charter is comprised of 17 agencies. Each of the agencies provide an executive secretariat member, a board member, and a communications member. The executive secretariat is essentially the operational arm of the Charter. The board is responsible for making final decisions related to Charter functions and priorities, and the communications group deals with outreach activities. Our primary goal is for the Charter to assist disaster management agencies with geospatial data and information. We address a number of different kinds of disasters. Events can be either man-made or natural. Recent man-made events that the Charter has responded to include the oil spill in Mauritius and the industrial accident recently in Lebanon. But by far, natural events are the majority of activations that we respond to. You'll see here how those activations are distributed spatially on the left. The darker blue dots are the flood and ocean wave events. The lighter blue are storm and hurricane. These two events make up over 60% of the Charter activations that we respond to. So our stakeholders and capacity development. Stakeholders include disaster risk management agencies from all levels of government, but primarily at the national level. And in terms of capacity building, the Charter offers training on Charter operations to end users, familiar with the process so that they can become familiar with the process and know where to go for the information they need. The Charter also offers data processing and mapping support through various value-added providers. And all of the information that the Charter produces is provided on a Charter website, which also includes a Charter operational system known as COS2. This is for managing disaster events and is only accessible through a password protection for those people responding to the event, meaning project managers, the authorized user who initiated the event, and the end users and value-added providers. So there have been hundreds of activations over the last few years, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of recent events. The Kilauea earthquake and eruptions that occurred for several days in May of 2018 resulted in over 60 individual map products being produced by the Charter. The Sentinel-2 image that you see here on the left shows several lava flows originating from a line of fissures, each of which was hundreds of meters long. The image on the right shows a lava flow moving through a residential area. Gary Fisher, a member of the National Civil Applications Center, commented that the frequency and quantity of collections allowed daily mapping of the lava spread. Another more recent example is that of Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas. On September 1st, Hurricane Dorian struck the Bahamas as a Category 5 hurricane, caused extensive infrastructure damage to the Great Abaco and the Grand Bahama Islands. You'll see on the left the image that was developed within 24 hours of the Charter being activated. It's a grading map of infrastructure damage. It shows the inset there, shows the individual structures and roads that are color-coded and classified as possibly damaged or destroyed. One structure that was damaged included a coastal refinery where it was feared oil might have damaged the marine environment. So radar data from our South Korea Charter members, shown here on the right, were used to assess that no suspected marine oil signatures were observed. So sometimes what you don't find is equally as important as what you can see in the imagery. So in terms of challenges, gaps, and opportunities, timely response is certainly a challenge. The Charter has made great strides through our operational systems for managing disaster events so that the timeliness is greatly improved. We have automatic notifications to all of those responding to the disaster to avoid any limitations to standard email issues or contact via phone. Communication and collaboration. I can see these being considered both a gap and an opportunity. With several agencies being involved in disaster response, there is a need to better communicate to minimize redundancies and collaborate on the data and information sharing to the degree that data policies allow. So in summary, space technologies can deliver key information that brings benefit to the planning and implementation of disaster relief operations. The Charter continues to grow. We've responded to 650 plus disasters since 2000 in more than 125 countries worldwide. We're expanding our user base by promoting universal access from in-country disaster management organizations, giving them the ability to activate the Charter on their own behalf and not relying on an outside entity. Another thing that we're moving forward with is the idea of a processing platform that links directly to our operational system where imagery is stored so that users can come in and generate value-added products such as flood inundation, damage assessments, without having to download the data to their specific locations, machines, or servers. So I thank you very much for the opportunity to share our work with you today, and I'll be glad to answer any questions when we come to the question and answer portion. Thanks again.
Okay, good morning. My name is Luis Robledo. I am a professor and researcher from Universidad Andrés Bello in Chile, and I am the co-chair of the Disaster Risk Reduction Regional Working Group for Earth Observations of the Americas. Next slide, please. And today we are going to see the Américas Disaster Working Group presentation and focus on applied research for disaster risk reduction. Next slide, please. The presentation for the Disaster Working Group report covers the work that we have been doing with relations to the integration of regional international organizations such as United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction Office, REDLAC, SICA, CONAI, and some special agencies from Paraguay and Bolivia, and CONIDA from Peru. Also, during the last 2 years, our group has developed more than 20 webinars in the Americas with the participation for over 1,500 people. This working group has supported Sendai through the integration of regional agencies and by the same token, the formalization of important working alliances that have occurred within the Sendai framework. Okay. Focus of mainly in some research projects like, for instance, risk understanding, such as the case of the multi-risk evaluation and integration for Earth observation for seismic risk modeling in Guatemala City. That project integrates UNDRR and Guatemala City Municipality, Dr. Ana Astorga, NASA, SICA, and Américas. We have also worked in collaboration with the Latin American universities under REDULAC, which will have a special week on September this year. Also worth mentioning is the support for the implementation of the GeoSilver site for geological risk in Nicaragua in support for the it's the undersea approval. Also, several universities have developed research lines in DRR, which will contribute to the development of local levels of risk knowledge. The disaster working group have contributed along the environmental commission between USA, Mexico, and Canada by the development of 3 tri-national workshops in wildfires and flooding during August 2019 and coming events on September and October this year. And finally, we have supported reactivation of GEO in some countries such as Dominican Republic, Panama, Bolivia, and Central America in general, including Caribbean countries. Next slide, please. According to Applied Research Disaster Risk Reduction, these are some just of the top institutions that we work with. Next slide, please. Well, in between that, we are going to cover only four projects, and due to time restrictions, one of them is the earthquake and tsunami warning system with GSGF data. We have to know that Chile is prone to large earthquakes and damaging tsunamis that significant, and we have made significant effort to continue to prepare for, warn, and respond for these events. We are now having the coverage of global navigation satellite system networks that have been established and enhanced to provide information and warning about large earthquakes and tsunamis. Under the National Seismological Center of Universidad of Chile, they are providing information about the earthquake and potential tsunami from GNS data within seconds and provide early warnings to communities in Chile and the rest of the world. This project is have been built with GNS station needed to be operating in real time with a robust communication channels for the early warning system to be efficient. The next slide, please. The second project, that research project that is of our concern, is the Kabul geohazard in southern Andes. This is one of the super sites that is mainly comprised of several stations, marine stations under a 200 kilometers long segment of the southern Andes Cordillera. This super site is one of the few super sites in the world, and is of course open for acquiring and make available ground and satellite data. That data should allow monitoring the volcano deformation patterns and modeling and understanding some perturbations. It's of course also made for acquiring and make openly available ground data over further volcanoes in the area, which may show signs and potential eruptions of high impact. Next slide, please. The third project that we are seeing is the integrated tsunami forecast and warning system, which now it aims to a decision support system for the national tsunami warning system of Chile. This project, CPAT, delivered assessment in less than 20 seconds, well below the 5-minute threshold considered by the existing protocol, thereby allowing conservative evaluations if they are considered necessary by the operators. CPAT was initially developed under the framework of the Japan-Chilean research project on enhancement of technology to develop a tsunami-resilient community sponsored by SAFEREX, a program by Japan Science and Technology Agency. Next slide, please. Finally, we are going to talk about my project, the development of a multi-level early warning system for typhoon, rainstorm, triggered landslide. This project is under the National Science Foundation from Chile and China. It's a project between two universities, a 4 years length project with mainly aim to network promotion and research progress and data exchange, of course. Next slide, please. The project aims to provision a multi-early warning system that should provide risk knowledge, monitoring and prediction, dissemination of information and response in order to provide a response in real time, having development, integration and application of state-of-the-art knowledge and technologies for predicting or warning typhoon rainstorm-induced landslide hazards on different time scales based on multiple data sources. Next slide, please. Okay, and finally, the early warning system, of course, is designed to respond in time, considering development, integration, and application of state-of-the-art knowledge and technologies in order to predict or warn typhoon rainstorm-induced landslides, which should be a stable, reliable, and comprehensive system with comprehensive data sources, with 2- and 3-dimensional image data, geological information, slope deformation, multiple data acquisition methods in order to provide forecasting and warning of point-to-face low-cost landslide systems. Okay, this is the presentation. Please, next slide, please. I will be able to respond question and answer at the final of the presentation of these sessions and in any of the subjects I have covered or anything else that you desire. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.
My name is Ricardo Mena. I work with the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, and I'm going to be supporting David Green in co-moderating this session, particularly taking care of the questions and answers section. So I would like to start by thanking our distinguished panelists. We appreciate the information you have provided on the project activities and efforts to advance the use of data for decision making in this session number 6 on disasters. We are now going to respond to questions the audience has provided via the Slido app. I first want to remind the audience to ensure that they are in the room that corresponds to this session. And before moving into the questions, I would like to very quickly highlight a couple of points. I can see that the region is working together on geospatial information closely, and this is very good news. So it's great to hear about the many activities and collaborations that are going on in the region on this issue. At the global level, I will share this with you as well. The UN is developing its geospatial strategy. And what's interesting is that one of the key strategic drivers of this strategy as it's being developed actually is this entire framework for disaster risk reduction, together with many of the other international instruments related to the Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, but also others like, for example, the Habitat 3 Agreement on the work of the organization at the urban level, the new urban agenda, and also the Small Island Developing States Accelerated Modalities for Action, known as the Samoa Pathway, etc. So it's very interesting to listen to you
while this effort is also going on internally at the UN. I have to say that we have listened to a lot of examples of how geospatial information can indeed be used for disaster response. Mainly, we have also heard about how gradually and consistently this technology and knowledge and information is also being used for disaster risk reduction. I think that the examples provided by Professor Robledo actually talk to that trend that we can see. And in that context, I would say that it is very important for the Office for Disaster Risk Reduction that the efforts also move towards the anticipatory and prospective type of uses of this technology on geospatial information, knowledge, and technologies that can be put to the use also for completing systemic risk assessments that can help countries to try to avoid creation of new risk and reduce existing risk. In that sense, we have worked very closely with NASA and many other partners to develop the Global Risk Assessment Framework, which intends to bring all these multi-stakeholder and also disciplines from different sides on whatever can support the better characterization of risk and looking at it also from the systemic point of view, as we know very clearly, and for this COVID-19 has been a clear demonstrator of that. We have to look at risk in a comprehensive systemic way, otherwise we can potentially lead to decisions that are not the most appropriate ones. So let me with that move now to the questions, and I would like to first perhaps address one of the first questions that was posted, and it says, what can be done to put a resilient, especially connectivity infrastructure in place that can ensure continuity in global information and data flows, even in case of disasters and hazards? And perhaps also another question that I can already mention to the panelists, and I will let you choose which one you take. It relates on how can small businesses work with and assist Caribbean nations adopt and deploy geospatial technology and location-based data for decision-making across, disaster risk and other industries as well. So perhaps I stop at this point on these questions and invite the panelists to respond to those. So if any of you would wish to take these questions, I please welcome you to take the floor. Any of the panelists invited to respond to this question? Okay, I don't see any of the panelists responding to the questions, so let me perhaps ask directly to someone of you if Claudia is online. There is a question related to Sepredenac, so I would like to ask Claudia to respond to this question. And the question asks, what type of linkages has Sepredenac with universities and the academic community, and what is the role of that community in disaster prevention in Central America? So Claudia, over to you.
Muchas gracias, Raúl, muchas gracias, participantes en este importante evento. Sí quiero comentarles sobre una iniciativa muy interesante que estamos promoviendo desde el CEPRENAC en coordinación con CESUCA, que es la instancia regional que coordina a todas las universidades de la región. A nivel de educación superior estamos conscientes que no solamente podemos formar profesionales en gestión de riesgo de desastre, sino que también debemos sensibilizar a los futuros profesionales de cualquier carrera. Y es por esa razón que estamos transversalizando el tema de gestión integral de riesgo en todas las universidades públicas del país. En un esfuerzo conjunto con la Cooperación Suiza para el Desarrollo, estamos también desarrollando 9 subproyectos, a través del cual estamos implementando dentro de las distintas carreras la temática de gestión integral de riesgo, desarrollando diplomados, cursos, directamente dirigidos a los docentes, pero también a los estudiantes. De esta manera estamos buscando que contribuyan activamente y que se incorpore una cultura de gestión de riesgo en las actividades, en los ámbitos de competencia, en los entornos profesionales, indistintamente de cuáles sean, ya que estamos conscientes que con su aporte podemos hacer la diferencia y contribuir a construir entornos mejor preparados para prevenir la aparición de nuevos riesgos de desastres y reducir los ya existentes. También hemos venido apoyando la implementación de la política universitaria de gestión integral de riesgo, la cual está vinculada con la política centroamericana de gestión integral de riesgo, que a su vez ha sido también armonizada con el marco de Sendai y constituye un compromiso al más alto nivel de los jefes de Estado. Estamos también desarrollando una serie de acciones de planeación de los procesos de capacitación de los docentes para la educación de gestión de riesgo y adaptación al cambio climático, desarrollando procesos de acreditación, procesos de certificación, todo esto con un rol muy activo de la academia, porque estamos conscientes de la necesidad y de la importancia de la vinculación de la academia, las entidades técnicas científicas, y en esa articulación con los programas nacionales de formación para los docentes, con el fin de que a corto y a mediano plazo la educación para la gestión de riesgos se integre tanto en los procesos de formación orientados según cada uno de nuestros países y el contexto específico, pero también desde una promoción de los institutos superiores, de las academias de certificación y promoviendo un rol muy activo para profundizar en los programas también de actualización, de inducción para los docentes que están actualmente en servicio y que están pues prestando todos estos conocimientos, y obviamente nos interesa que se pueda seguir abordando tanto en lo conceptual, en lo metodológico, y un posicionamiento sistemático de la gestión para la gestión de riesgo en las propuestas educativas. De esta manera estamos buscando una producción del conocimiento, estamos también identificando las tendencias del desarrollo en la gestión de riesgo, generando nuevo conocimiento y obviamente vinculado con las prioridades del marco de Sendai y de nuestra política centroamericana, promoviendo también una nueva legislación tanto a nivel regional como a nivel nacional, que se incorpore estas políticas centroamericanas dentro de las legislaciones nacionales e incorporando en la planeación del desarrollo para también contribuir al cumplimiento de los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Muchas gracias, Jessica.
Thank you very much, Claudia, to you. And perhaps I would like to go now to Simone, because there is a specific question on the Caribbean nations, and it relates on how can small businesses work with the and assist the Caribbean nations adopt and deploy geospatial technology and location-based data for decision-making across the disaster risk reduction and other industries. So if Simone, you would like to enlighten us with some key pointers on that.
Thank you for that, Ricardo. So data, whether it be socio-economic, natural, and otherwise, is always important with regards to driving decision-making where disasters are concerned, and in particular where small businesses are concerned and their interactions with the general public and the needs of the public and citizenry, of course, would be very helpful in terms of informing the whole decision-making process where disasters are concerned, in particular, given the fact that disasters impact all of us. So businesses do have a good niche in terms of being able to facilitate the provision of the data that maybe government may not readily have access to. And so, yes, in support of the fact that, yes, small businesses can provide needed support in terms of providing needed data that would help to drive the decision-making process where disasters are concerned in general.
Thank you very much, Simone. And also a question for Oscar. Perhaps, Oscar, you are the best place to respond to this question about how to make sure that the infrastructure that is necessary for keeping all these capabilities on geospatial information can be really maintained so that they can be actually available and accessible at any time. So maybe you have a few comments to do around that, Oscar?
Sí, gracias, Ricardo. Me permite saludar a Raúl, a Claudia, a Michelle, todos conocidos y amigos. La pregunta que es una pregunta muy interesante porque en la región del Caribe, en la región mesoamericana, Centroamérica y México inclusive, uno de los aspectos que complican el uso de la información geoespacial tiene que ver con la infraestructura existente. Y esta infraestructura, pues, es infraestructura que tiene que ser modernizada, que tiene que ser adquirida o rentada por los países o por las agencias que trabajan en la región. Las tecnologías de la información revisten un costo elevado, hay que decirlo de manera muy clara. Y en la región ha habido muchos proyectos que tienen una inversión inicial que permite contar con la infraestructura, y para el manejo de información geoespacial pues se requiere una infraestructura, como todos lo sabemos, robusta, servidores, red, nube, y no solo eso, sino también capacidades de técnicos especializados para el manejo de la información, de las bases de datos y sobre todo del procesamiento de la información para poder generar toma de decisión. En este sentido, hemos buscado en la región algunos formatos. Estas compras de equipos pues que quedan después de 5 o 6 años ya obsoletos, ha ido evolucionando con procesos de integración de información y de difusión y de procesamiento de información a través de la nube. Me parece que hacia allá tendríamos que migrar. También tenemos que buscar mecanismos que nos permitan a todos los países consolidar esquemas de mucho más baratos, por así decirlo, del uso de las tecnologías. Hoy en día se han logrado buenos avances en toda la región. El uso de la información geoespacial ya no es el hito que era hace 10 años. Hace 10 años conseguir una imagen de satélite, rehacer una base de datos, tener información sobre población, vivienda y sobre todo lo más importante, sobre las amenazas en términos probabilísticos, resultaba complicado. Ustedes lo saben, hace 10 años, 15 años era muy difícil. Se ha evolucionado, la tecnología nos permite avanzar en este sentido, pero hay todavía déficit y la pregunta que hiciste, Ricardo, sobre cómo asegurar la infraestructura, me parece que es todavía un reto en la región. Habría que trabajar con los organismos de financiamiento, habría que trabajar con las agencias técnicas y habría que tener un esquema en el cual, sin un costo tan alto, se pueda asegurar las tecnologías de la información y las capacidades instaladas por periodos prolongados de tiempo que permitan no solamente la operación diaria, sino la operación bajo condiciones de emergencia o de desastre.
Thank you very much, Oscar.
Gracias, muchas gracias.
Listening some echo. Okay, thank you very much. So I was saying thank you very much, Oscar, and it's really nice to see you all guys on the screen. I wanted to also now turn to Michael, because there is a specific question to Michael, but I'm going to combine two questions to you, Michael. First, there's a question on whether the data that you mentioned in your presentation from the International Charter will be available to the community, and who should be contacted to gain access to it, if you can respond to that. But I would also like to listen to your views on another question that we have now from David, actually, on the fact that I was already alluding to in terms of using the geospatial information also to look at issues related to exposure and vulnerability, and what more can the observation community do to integrate socioeconomic, cultural context data, and other vulnerability-related data into potentially risk maps and decision tools. So if you can comment on that, Michael, that would be great. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. In terms of the data being available from the charter, one thing I didn't focus on in the presentation was that the charter is based on responding to the immediate response phase. So the intention is not to provide data in long-term research mode or anything like that. It's actually for disaster response for national disaster management agencies. So to gain access to data is different from gaining access to the derived information. If data is actually of interest, so the actual image data, then the person requesting would have to have some role in the response phase, meaning they're producing value-added products of damage assessment, mapping, or some other type of derived product. And that would be a person who's then nominated as a value-added provider. They are given access to the data. They have credentials that they log into and can download the data locally and produce products from it. In terms of information, the information derives, so if you have other value-added providers that are creating and generating maps, those are all made available through our website. So if it's information and derived products you're looking for, that's readily available. If you're actually wanting to work with the data, you need to be involved some way in the response phase and gain access to those restricted data. Because much of this data, as mentioned, is provided for free, and there are some restrictions on data sharing policies. I hope that answers the first question. In terms of the second, that's a very good question, how to integrate more local information and socioeconomic information into the mapping. I think it comes down to something I mentioned as one of the gaps and opportunities is communication among different agencies working on disaster response. So in terms of the international charter, we're very broad in our need or our goal to just provide access to data and information, but we also don't have access to that type of socioeconomic information or other data that might come from a local agency or university or so on. So I think somehow having networks that can work together to incorporate all the data that's necessary and useful in producing either tools for analysts to use or for mapping products that include the relevant information not only from satellite but from those other socioeconomic sources.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. And I would also like to invite my colleague Raul Salazar from our regional office for the Americas based in Panama to share with you some brief details on the work that we are currently doing in Costa Rica to support the Costa Rican government on the development of a systemic risk assessment, which I think in the sense of, as I was referring to the global risk assessment framework, the pilots that we are supporting and promoting would be potentially, a great connector or integrator of initiatives that should be open to all available data, knowledge, and information to make it as robust as possible. But perhaps, Raul, you can share some of the basic details about collaboration.
Thank you, Ricardo. Yes, indeed, the work that the regional office is advancing in the region is trying to bring to the practice this approach of the systemic risk and how to analyze the complexity of the reality that we are seeing every day. And basically what we're trying to assess is how these cascade effects might be addressed from a multi-sector perspective. And based on that idea, we started a conversation with Costa Rica in January this year, actually before the COVID-19 pandemic started, to begin to make this analysis from a multi-sectoral approach. We had this conversation basically on the idea of identifying a sector in particular in Costa Rica that might be of main interest, either by its economic impact in the country, by these linkages through the different connections in the economy to the different sectors, and then from there starting to analyze the different aspects that might affect the continuity, let's say, of that sector. The idea of this approach is basically that we need to assess risks in a different way. I mean, we cannot see risk now from a unique perspective, just singling out one specific hazard, but we need to take into account different contexts with different ways in which one type of hazard might affect the other. And the decision-making process is also interconnected. The COVID-19 experience is showing us that. I mean, that the specific hazard, which is a health emergency, is having an impact, a cascade impact in different sectors. Costa Rica knows well this, and then the idea is how we can advance in this assessment. But as Ricardo mentioned, to try to assess a reality that is complex requires a lot of information, a lot of sources of information that we need to put together to make this decision, support this decision-making process, to build this scenario that is formed by different connections of different impacts on hazards, sometimes occurring simultaneously. So this is the idea of advancing this pilot in Costa Rica. The idea is starting this discussion with the government and the different sectors that have committed to the process.
Thank you very much, Raul. And I think we're to the end of the it's a segment on questions and comments by the panelists and some remarks and summary from my side. So I'm going to hand over back to David, who is the co-moderator for this session, who will be doing the closing session. So I thank you very much. Again, as I said, it's great to see you, although only in the screen, but nowadays with COVID-19, we are all used to this type of interaction. But in any case, it's really a pleasure to see you all, and I send you big regards from Geneva. So back to you, David.
Ricardo actually seems to be experiencing some difficulties with David's connection, and he's not able to provide. Would you want to summarize comments from this session?
So thanks for giving me the floor again, and sorry that David is facing problems for the session closing, but we are just 1 minute away from the closing. So I would thank you once again to all of our panelists and for the questions that were submitted by the audience. As a reminder, we will be providing all of the questions that were not addressed during this session directly to the appropriate speaker, and we hope to have a response to your question within 48 hours. So by way of closing, I want to thank all the panelists, thank also my co-moderator, David, for having organized this meeting and having put this issue on the agenda of the Américas and GGIM meeting, which I think it's a quite important one. As I said, for the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, the UN more broadly speaking, the use of geospatial information for the Sustainable Development Agenda and also the disaster risk reduction and the climate change agenda is crucial. However, as I said, I would really invite all of you to look at ways in which we can find the use of this geospatial information knowledge and technology, which is absolutely there, it is available, to concentrate also on the risk reduction aspects, looking at ways in which risk can be reduced. And we have already had an exchange on many of the ways in which that can be done, but particularly focusing on the vulnerability aspects, socioeconomic aspects, and others that can help better characterize the actual level of risk of communities and societies throughout the Americas. And for that, Raul has been here with us also, and Sepredenak and all of you representing organizations that can provide a lot of value added into this process. And of course, we as UNDRR, we stand ready to reporting, as I said, as the connector and the integrator of these initiatives, and to hopefully also in the near future start sharing what are the best practices so that this information can be made available to all those interested in the region and beyond. So with that, and now that's already past 4:25, let me end, and 4:25 my time, by the way, it's a different time zone, but wishing you a great rest of the day, and thank you very much again. Thank you.
All right, and thank you to all of our speakers from our last session. Very insightful conversation, and we appreciate the response from the region. Before I send you on break, the planning committee for the symposium wanted to give you a sneak peek at an exciting new initiative that will be launched this fall. As we are all aware, COVID-19 has significantly impacted the way in which we can engage with each other in the international community. The event has highlighted barriers that prevent members in the international community from interacting through traditional means, especially for training opportunities and capacity building initiatives. These barriers are not new, as several other factors can contribute to members in our community not being able to attend in-person trainings. So to better respond to the needs of the region and to overcome these barriers, we're proud to showcase and give you a sneak peek at an exciting new project, the Academy of the Americas, which aims at empowering data-driven decision-making. This exciting new initiative aims at working virtually with our community of stakeholders to access a variety of different training opportunities provided by a network of providers and practitioners in the region, several who are actively participating in the symposium. The Academy of the Americas will be a network of public and private institutions, academia, and commercial partners who will work together to build the capacity to advance the use of statistical, Earth observation, geospatial, and other data to improve the understanding and support decision-making. The goal of the Academy is to offer classroom, e-learning, and webinar education and training opportunities by providing students flexible options to gain knowledge, skills, and abilities to use social, economic, environmental, and other Earth data. This platform will allow users in the region to access a variety of training options, including to participate in pre-recorded webinars. These webinars can be accessed at any time that the students need and have a variety of different options, including several in Spanish. Additionally, we'll be offering online courses, which will provide a virtual classroom experiences where students and Earth observation users can engage directly with the instructor to learn more about the various activities going on in the region. Additionally, this Academy will provide a growing access for a catalog of data, apps, and services. The Academy was initially developed in close coordination with several strategic partners, including Américas, UN-GGIM, Red Clara, the UN-GGIM Academic Network of the Americas, AmericaView, and the Open Geospatial Consortium. However, we are looking to expand our partners in the region. So in order for this initiative to be successful, we need the support and help of everyone on this call. Consider this your call to action. The Academy is looking to expand its existing knowledge base by featuring new learning opportunities that are offered by various partners in the region. So how can you get involved? We're asking that you identify pre-recorded webinars or training opportunities to help us develop our virtual course catalog that will be hosted via this academic network. And additionally, this will allow the opportunity for the members on this call to interact with the various communities of practice. So following the symposium, additional information regarding this initiative will be sent out to all of the symposium participants. And if you would like any additional information, please feel free to contact me directly at the Américas Secretariat. So thank you all for your attention. We will now be taking a quick break. And it's currently 10:31. We'll be joining back at 10:45.